Alright everyone, welcome back to Dope Smoke Sesh. And today I'm about to teach you one of my favorite cooking methods. Um, because sometimes we don't have a oven. So what we need to do is get creative like any other stoner does. So me myself, whenever I'm making edibles, I'm gonna teach you the easiest way to cook some edibles without a oven. You do need a stove. So basically all we need is a pan on which we're going to put or fill with water. And, we fill it with water. See? Filled with, well, not filled all the way. Next thing you need is your weed, obviously, and a mason jar, especially a mason jar. The reason why is because since we're not going to be using an oven, we're going to use this on the stove. Now, the way we're going to do this is we're going to put our water to boil. Once our water starts boiling, we're going to put in our weed. You're going to grind it up, but not too fine like you were going to smoke it. The reason why is later on when we filter it to infuse it with whatever we might want to, well, we don't want no Scooby snacks in that motherfucker, because yeah. So actually another thing we're gonna need is a strainer. So all right, you got your water boiling, you got your weed, grind it up, but not too finely. You could grind it up with your hands. That's what I would recommend. And you will put it inside. Once it's inside, the water's boiling, we're gonna leave it there. And oh yeah, most importantly, put the cap on. You need a cap. That's why I said a mason jar. And a mason jar, because since we're gonna put it directly on the water, if it's any other type of jar, it might break. So we need a mason jar. Anyways, I really like this method because unlike in the oven, unlike in the stove, unlike in an air fryer, unlike in a pan, you need additional shit. You need a thermostat, which I don't have. So I really like this method. And the reason why is in the previous mentioned ones, you need a thermostat because you constantly are changing the heat, whether it's in the oven, in the pan, in the air fryer, whatever. And it's never consistent because, it might say it's one thing, but it's really another. While with this, scientifically, we know that water always burns at 100 degrees. Here and in China, everywhere, it always burns at 100 degrees and it never goes past 100 degrees. So what does this mean? This means you can't fuck this up. Why? Well, because water always boils at 100 degrees and it stays at 100 degrees, no matter what you do to it. So there's no having to keep worrying about the heat because we know water boils at 100 degrees. Anyways, we leave this here for an hour. Now, the whole hour, we need to make sure the water that we have boiling surpasses the wheat that we have in here. So if the wheat's in here, we need at least this much water. You get what I'm saying? So once an hour has gone by, we take it out. By then, our wheat would be decarboxylated. I don't know if I'm pronouncing it right. Or decarb abbreviation. Let's just leave it at decarb. And the way that we know this is because our wheat would have gone from green to a brownish, goldish looking color. And another way that I can tell is it starts to squeak or squeal, whatever. You hear the wheat just squeaking. Once you hear that, and it's been an hour, well, boom, we take it out and we let it rest for 30 minutes. We set it aside, right? You take it out, you set it aside. And by this time, our wheat is decarbed. So our THC or THCA, which is wheat that has not been applied heat to, would have turned to THC. So now it will get you high. If you don't do this process, you're not going to get high. So just smoke it for that matter. So this is the most important part of the process, I would say. After this is done, you could do can of butter, you could do oil, you could do milk infusions. The possibilities are endless. You put the limit. Um, Same thing with doses, you put the limit. But the way I apply it is they say weed, when we smoke it, we smoke 20% of the weed. And when you eat it, well, it's on reverse. You eat 80% of the weed. Remember, we're working with a 100% ratio here. So when we smoke it, we only smoke 20% or get 20% of the benefits. But when we eat it, we get 80% of the benefits and lose 20%, and vice versa. On the first one, we get 20 and lose 80. And when we eat, we gain 80 and lose 20. But, anyways, so once you have all of this ready, all you need is now, me personally, the easiest thing is you could use the same jar and just add a stick of butter. Remember, a stick of butter with no salt. And you put it in here and you let it melt or you let it infuse for the next 2 to 3 hours. And the same thing applies with this method. You must keep checking that the water does not reduce or passes the wheat levels or your can of butter levels. It always has to be higher, a little bit, like half an inch. After this, and 3 hours have gone by, well, you could strain your can of butter into any type of container. Doesn't really matter. Well, don't use one with a hole, but any type of container really. And you let it dry overnight out in your kitchen, over the sink, whatever. You let it dry overnight, and by the next day, you would have can of butter. Now, it's important to say that by this time, the water, if there's any in the can of butter, would have been separated from the can of butter. So just poke a little hole in your can of butter and let that water drain out, and boom, you got can of butter. You could use it for whatever you want. Coffee, cookies, brownies, pizza, spaghetti, eggs, whatever you want. And boom, there you have it. If you like this video, man, go ahead and give it a thumbs up, comment, subscribe, and I'll see you in the next Dope Smoke session.